adult basic education programs, and it is an honor to speak to you tonight in support of this tremendous project we call the Corinne Organization of Minnesota. This being the 5th KOM Gala, the theme this year was weaving. I'd like to start this evening with some background on our weaving project that was begun almost 3 years ago, and introduce you to Rosie Say, who was one of the weavers who was bold enough to get up in front of all of you and speak. And I'd like to finish with some ideas about how KOM is an organization that helps keep the fabric of Corinne community in Minnesota together. The first weaving circle that I had the opportunity to work with was begun by a handful of Corinne students at our school. A woman named Esther Say, a master weaver, and her daughter, Damu, pulled together several weavers from our school and really worked to get a circle, weaving circle, off the ground. They didn't have looms, they didn't have a warping board, they didn't have any thread. Working with KOM, Sue Johnston, and Alexis Wallstead, I was able to get some detailed plans for parts, the actual tools used by Corinne weavers. And using several of our Corinne students as interpreters, we were able to make adjustments and actually make some of the beginning prototype tools to get this off the ground. With several generous gifts from the Roseville Foundation, some individual donations, we were able to buy the materials and buy some thread and get started. One afternoon, our school's English learning coordinator, Betsy Gadetis Garcia, and I gathered materials together in one of our classrooms and left the women together for a few minutes before we were going to get started. We were hoping to get the weavers to look over the materials and give us some idea about what we were missing, what we needed to still get started. When we came down 20 minutes later, the women had transformed the classroom into a whirlwind of weaving production. 2 of them were already far into warping the first loom, and everyone else was on the floor with skeins of thread around their knees, around their feet, rolling double threads of yarn into balls. And teacher Betsy and I joined them on the floor and tried earnestly to get some balls rolled. And I learned some of my first Corinne words that day as the women laughed appreciatively over our fumbling efforts. I learned the words "kur ya ya," which means slow. Soon after, we were joined by Keith Pierce, a member of the Weavers Guild, who was very interested in learning Corinne weaving. Keith and his wife had been very active in refugee resettlement and also saw the importance of supporting this project. Keith has been invaluable in his growing expertise on thread producers, his search for quality, and his relentless pursuit of wholesale pricing. We have begun working with the Guild to apply for a grant, monies focusing on cultural preservation, trying to keep the weaving traditions of the Corinne alive and the art alive. Through KOM, Sue Johnson and Alexis Wallstead, they had been working on some grants on mental health. And soon a partnership with Goodwill Easter Seals emerged. And Charles Baker sat down at the table with grant money and a lot of goodwill. We were introduced to Kylie, Shi Zhang, and reintroduced to Darius, Josiah, all people who work tirelessly directly with these women, making sure that the circle flourishes and grows. As we were pulling this collaboration together, another partner emerged. Friends Beth Cleary and Peter Ratcliffe stepped forward, offering us space in the newly resurrected East Side Freedom Library. which was shuttered a few years ago when the new community center was opened a couple of blocks away. The Freedom Library is dedicated to preserving stories of life, labor, and immigration on St. Paul's East Side. Peter and Beth saw right away the opportunity to work with some of the newest immigrants on the East Side and jumped at the chance. This weaving project has been important for many reasons, including cultural preservation, the passing of weaving knowledge across generations and across weavers, individual weavers, enriching the artistry of each participant. For our school, it has been particularly rewarding to watch as these women begin to connect their weaving literacies with English language learning. Acknowledging someone's background knowledge is an important value in adult education. Weavers tend not to admit just how intricate and delicate the art really is, how detailed, how special their talent is. It is amazing to see the transformation as they reveal the teachers, the elders, community builders, and master weavers that they are. We strive to honor them as tramu, as teachers. Ask any of our EL teachers, instructors who have worked with these women about weaving, and you will see a knowing smile brush across their faces. I know I have missed some of the people who have been involved in this collaboration, and if you're here and you have been a part of this, including the weavers, would you please stand up and be acknowledged? The most important group of people involved in this project, of course, are the weavers. And I would like to begin to introduce Rosie Say. I've got a couple things to say about her. And have her tell you some thoughts on why this is an important project. I began to know Rosie at the Arts in the Hollow Art Fair, which was the first public event that this weaving circle had. Rosie is not one to sit around for a long time, and we found ourselves touring the artist booths and walking about and actually, meeting artists. It was great. They had an installation of empty picture frames in a circle, facing out, opening onto different parts of Sweet Hollow. One framed a bush, another one framed a smokestack in the distance. There were others sort of placed around. It was a wonderfully odd arrangement, and I remember working with my friend Yoshu Wa, using him as an interpreter, trying to convey the meaning and artist intent. Rosie looked quizzically at the first frame, she looked at the second frame, and then another frame, and then came a huge belly laugh as the whimsy of the installation struck her, and we all had to chuckle. It was beautiful. She admired the craftsmanship of the artists as we walked from booth to booth, and on our way back we saw a display of paintings done by rescue parrots. Really. Her contagious laugh was again heard in the hollow, and she was joined by the women in the booth. Rosie is a connector. She brings joy and laughter wherever she goes. We were at another event, the Hmong Night Market, and at some point in the evening, when things got a bit slow, Rosie picked up a basket of candy and started handing it out to the children passing by. It was not only fun to watch, but it was a brilliant marketing move, and things really picked up on the booth. It is an honor to speak here tonight. It is from an admiration born of a deep respect for what this organization does. If you ever want to get really confused, try to figure out funding for a resettlement, employment, and housing organization like KOM. How it works, the regulations, the limitations, the dizzying array of definitions that are superimposed on people. I have been trying to get it for several years now, and let's just say that it's giving me a new definition of the word lifelong learning. An analysis of this funding suggests that of all the things that KOM does, the whole breadth of their work, they get paid for about 40%. About 60% is currently unfunded. Just imagine what they could do with more funding. It's incredible leverage. And yet, when people walk into the office, when they call at all hours of the day and night, when a community need arises, when a crisis erupts, they are there seamlessly to weave together the social service challenges of immigration, public assistance, housing, mental health, employment, legal issues. It's a huge project. My friend Marner Saw calls this an intricate dance, and it is amazing navigation. They do so much that more than most of us could imagine, leveraging the often meager amounts of aid into a broad and lasting community building organization. Attempting to create opportunities for the Korean community, they have built relationships from the ground up with organizations and companies that are widespread all over the state. Some of the ones that I personally work with are the Roseville Schools, the City of Roseville, Ramsey County, the Southern Minnesota Regional Legal Service, SMERLS, Developing Advocacy for Chronic Housing Issues, Bix Foods, Bailey Nurseries, Goodwill Easter Seals, the Eastside Freedom Library, the Weavers Guild, and Hamline University, just to name a few. The Gardening Project, headed up by Saw Morrison, is a great example of the reach that KOM makes on behalf of the Korean. Collaborating with over 80 faith-based groups, the garden plots are utilized to bring fresh vegetables to the table, fresh air to people that have difficulty getting out of their apartments, reconnecting farmers to the earth in this urban environment. KOM has worked in the community, has created advocates that I don't even think they've met yet. I recently was introduced to Bonnie Vogel at Vogel Mechanical, who is interested in connecting Korean communities to registered apprenticeships, trades, and living wage jobs. This meeting was put together by Paul Bellata from the City of Roseville, an advocate of the Korean communities who became involved with KOM probably through collaborations around housing and green spaces. KOM's hard work in the community pays off in so many ways. A few years ago, I was preparing for a trip to Thailand to visit several Korean refugee camps and to study refugee and third country experiences. I asked several of our students if they would be interested in talking about what their experiences in transition had been. What advice would they give? Almost everyone spoke of the importance of coming to a place that had community resources like KOM. One interview in particular stood out for me. A couple who were learners and leaders in our school community spoke of landing in Georgia near Atlanta. At the time, there were 16 Korean in Georgia, no community, no advocacy group. They were isolated. The neighborhood continued to be a hostile environment despite all their efforts. Within 3 months, they had lost their public assistance because there was no one to help them make sense of the forms. Tuntun, a man in his 50s, was plunged into the world of meatpacking. And for 3 years, he and his family survived. They survived long enough to get their transportation from Thailand paid off, long enough to damage both of his shoulders, long enough to find the resources to come to Minnesota. Without an organization like KOM, their struggle was epic. Now they have help. I could go on with stories, but I don't want to end this speech without acknowledging the difficult challenges ahead. Many of the Karen have been here for some time, and their struggles are beginning to shift from resettlement to the deeper layers of tensions around assimilation, around the youth growing up and the elders of the community attempting to thrive in the frontiers of life in the U.S. How will the cultures of the U.S. contour those of the Karen as they merge? I am proud to work with the Karen Organization of Minnesota because they are just the kind of organization that will help to weave these disparate, raw strands together to help keep the fabrics of the Karen community vibrant and healthy. Thank you.